Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back to Canucks After Dark. It is Monday, June 23rd. We are in draft week. We are a week away from free agency. And the Abbotsford Canucks just won the AHL championship for the Calder Cup. So it's a pretty good day to be a hockey fan. The Edmonton Oilers lost, if that's your thing, which it might be mine as well. But as always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are we doing today, Clay?
I'm great, Parker. It's funny you mentioned the Oilers lost. It just realized we haven't done a show in a couple of weeks, but we're going to go at least two straight, if not more. Now with which officially an offseason with the Calder Cup done, yay. The Stanley Cup done, neutral. I'm fine with what happened, and I'm in a good mood. I celebrated my 51st birthday yesterday, so I would never be double your age again. But I'm still trying to.
Happy birthday!
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. No, but I'm glad to be here with you and talking about all things hockey once again. I missed it. How you been?
Good. Yeah, you mentioned we haven't done a show in a while, or in a couple of weeks at least, but that actually doesn't matter for the Oilers because that was only 6 days ago. That was last Tuesday.
Oh, it feels so long ago. Yeah.
But no, things are good.
Good.
It's funny because it's like, we didn't make the playoffs. I don't know if you remember that. Canucks didn't make the playoffs. So we've just sort of been on this like, hockey's like, we went from 16 teams and, 4 games every night and, awesome playoff hockey down and all the way to the final series. And then it's like, okay, every 2 nights, every 3 nights, there's a game. And then we have this little spike where it's like draft, free agency, there's interesting things. And then in 2 weeks, we are,
you're right.
3 months away from training camp, and it's we're back to being there's going to be no news. So it's exciting to get this little bump of something going on, and I'm hoping we have a pretty eventful week and a half or so here.
That's a great point. Usually, we can stretch whether we do every week or every 2 weeks, at least to the middle of July. But then you're right, it goes pretty quiet because anything after July, 10, July 15, pick a date you want. It becomes a late offseason signing. It becomes these guys probably shouldn't have waited so long. It becomes the GMs off to their cottages or wherever they go to. Yeah, and you're right. As much as we think this has been dry, August is going to be brutal. I already know.
Yeah. You start getting into, like, I'm actually going to go back and look, right? You start getting into, like Daniel Sprong territory. Literally, we did a show last July 1st. Yep. And it was DeBrusk, Heinen, Sherwood. That was the big. And 2 of those guys worked out fairly well.
Yes.
And then we didn't do a show until August 26th. We took
7 weeks.
Summer.
What?
We took the whole summer essentially because nothing happened. And you know what that show was? It was Summer Roundup. Vasily Podkolzin had been traded.
Yeah.
Sammy Blais signed to a PTO and ended up on the cup winning team here.
Yeah.
And Daniel Sprong was signed.
That was our news.
That was our news. And then after that, we took 2 weeks, and then it was like, when's Demko gonna play? And that was, and that was basically it. So we're at this last little bit of potential news here, with draft coming up. Whether the Canucks draft anybody is yet to be seen. Yeah. And of course, free agency coming up next Tuesday, which is kind of perfect for us because if we do a show next Monday, we preview free agency. And then if there's any big signings, we'll do something for free agency as well.
That's great. That's a good point. And then it's good because actually Wednesday I'm unavailable. So it's perfect. It's perfect. Monday is the pre-free agency. Tuesday will be the post-free agency. And if they do something July 2nd, then too bad, so sad, I guess.
Unless it's Marner, then we all hands on deck.
You do the show, and I will try and find service from a boat in where I'm up camping. We'll make it work. Perfect. We'll make it work. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, how are you feeling? Truly, are you ecstatic the Abbotsford Canucks won? Are you happy they won? Are you like, okay, this is good for the big team overall? Or are you actually whatever? And I'm pretty sure it's not the last one, but.
No, I'm happy. I didn't follow super closely. Right. Sort of like, every couple days I'd check or I'd see it somewhere. I watched the second and third of tonight's game. I watched most of the third period and overtime of game 5 as well.
Yes.
So once it was getting down to crunch time, and I was hoping to go to game 5, but tickets were crazy at the last minute. So, but yeah, no, I think it's great. I saw video of Manny Malhotra getting beer dumped on him and stuff in the dressing room, which was awesome. Yeah, it's one of those things that, for an organization, it's good, right? It might, who knows, maybe it gets more guys on PTOs to want to come here.
Right. Good point.
People who might want to sign AHL level deals and compete. But, how much does that actually do for the big club, which is obviously our main goal, right? You look at some of the guys who really stepped up, right? Like Linus Karlsson, Matt Sasson was really good.
Yep.
Archie Baines was like invisible for the first half of the playoffs and then was fantastic the last half. So you look at some of those guys and you think, hey, maybe they can make a push. But even if they do, you're talking lower end of the lineup, right? You're not talking about, Linus Karlsson coming in and being a second line winger next year. No. So the impacts will be, I think, fairly minimal, but they might still be there.
Yeah, great point. And before I make my next point, I must ask you, since I didn't get a chance. We were doing a birthday dinner for me, one of like many this weekend. So you watched the second and third. What was Karlsson's game-winning goal? Where was it from?
See, I missed that. I turned it on right after that, unfortunately.
No problem.
Because I was watching bits and pieces and sort of in and out of the room. So I missed that portion, unfortunately. I think I did watch the replay.
Okay, someone in the chat put it in too as well, because my point is, I can't remember a time where Karlsson has scored from further than 10 feet away from the net. Like, he's so good. He's so good in front of the net, rebounds and cut backdoor plays and there you go. Pass across, finish on side of the net, says Doodle Hockey. That makes sense. So I would agree with you. When I'm looking at next year, Parker, I'm looking at Karlsson to be a bottom 6, but he'll make the team. I'm looking at Sasson being maybe first or second guy up, or I'm looking at Mancini, if he's still here, fighting with Verlander, right, as the third pairing right shot behind Hronek and Myers, if nothing changes. And I'm very fascinated. I was reminded that Shilov's, because he's on a one-way contract and needs waivers to clear, you have to try and sneak him down, or you have to figure out what you're going to do with these 3 goalies. And I completely forgot about. I don't know where I was thinking. Obviously not that. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's tough because it's pretty easy to sneak guys through waivers, because there's that one day in the end of the preseason where every team has like 6 guys on waivers, right? And everyone's sort of just figured out their what their 23 man's going to look like, and to go pull a guy in now, you have to now put another guy away. It messes up your whole plans. So that's usually a pretty good time to do it. However, there's going to be a team that doesn't have a good backup goalie.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
And why wouldn't you take a flyer on a guy like Shilov? So it's going to be an interesting storyline. They can carry 3 goalies, but what a waste of a spot. Your AHL team doesn't have what are your better goalies? And, again, it's a bit of a nightmare. And I don't know what they'll do. It'll be something that we'll have to talk about in preseason, I imagine. Because like trade value wise, probably minimal, right? Like that's just not, goalies that haven't proven themselves really at the major level don't really have trade value. But, unless, Demko or Lankinen isn't available at the start of the season, you're going to have to get rid of one of them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And of course, we don't wish any ill will in any of our goalies, but maybe an injury or a slow start. Yeah, you never know. Like it's not a foregone conclusion that one of them gets dealt, but all things being equal, something's got to give for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Swerve and Irvin, declaring his loyalty for 7 months, and thank you, Fangirl, declaring her loyalty for 35 months. Appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, big topics really for this one. Obviously Abbotsford winning is big, and do they do parades for AHL titles?
Well, I'm sure they will.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll go down to Abbotsford. Sounds like a fun little day. Yeah, so that would be good. But and then obviously the big topic, and we're 4 days out from the NHL draft, right? Now the Canucks have a first round pick, which based on, if you search like Canucks draft or like Canucks 2025 draft, you will find very few articles about, hey, here's who the Canucks might take with the first round pick, right?
Yes,
and every
yes.
single year you get to this, you get to this portion of the offseason, and every single team has a bunch of articles. Hey, this is who sort of mocked to this team. None of that for the Canucks.
None.
Because no one thinks the Canucks are going to make the 15th overall pick on
Right.
Friday evening.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I joke around, but I'm very, self-aware. I admit that prospects is not my cup of tea. There are a lot of people who know a lot more than I do. And I happily admit that. And I will tell people to go watch those guys' streams because you're not going to get anything from me. But this is one year where I feel like people are onto me, not onto me, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of people that probably aren't doing as much as they normally would. A, because our pick isn't in the top 10. And B, yeah, the common knowledge or wisdom is that they will probably package it with something, and whether it's that plus a prospect for a player, that plus a player for something, who knows. And then I made this point on my show yesterday, Parker. It's one thing to say, the 50th overall pick and a prospect will get you a 2C, but you can't just say that because there's different levels of 2C too. There's like a really good 2C, and then there's like a bottom 2C who might be more like a 3C or a third right wing or a third left wing. So there's gonna be a lot of speculation, and that's cool. That's why we have these shows and things like that. But it's even though I don't know any of the draft picks, that doesn't excuse that I'm at a loss for what the Canucks are actually going to do and what everything is worth right now. But we're going to find out very, very soon as we get closer to the day.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like, just sort of looking at some articles that I looked at earlier, like the Canucks didn't send a big staff to the combine. That was a sign that many took to be, hey, like they know what's going on here. They're probably not picking anyone there.
Great point.
Yeah, 15's a weird spot because you can get some high ceiling guys that have a good chance of whiffing completely. You can get some guys who are probably projecting to be second, third line, middle six guys, mid first round. And you might get some hits, you might get some misses. But you're probably hoping for around a second line level of player at 15 overall.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, if the Canucks are thinking, hey, we're going to get a second line player, let's just go get one that can play now, right? Mm-hmm. That's an instant or an interesting thought. So it sounds like they're probably going to move that pick, and even that I'm looking at this Patrick Johnson article in the Province. He basically said, there's an anonymous NHL scout that said, 15 isn't a bad spot. There's no great targets, but there's not many awful options. So, and the Canucks are sort of rumored around this centerman from Seattle, Braden Coots.
Yes.
And then, so he says, if their guy really is Braden Coots, that's fine. He has 6 skill and an elite release, but he plays like a grinder, so it barely ever pops. Tops out as a mid-6 guy. So that's, again, sort of what we're looking around. It's tricky because, that's a few years out. And this team clearly is trying to build a competitor now and doesn't want to be stuck in that mushy middle.
Yes.
So that's the route they go. Like I don't see any reason that they would make this pick if they're going to try and go make a splash and get a guy that can add to the lineup tomorrow.
Love what you said there. 2 great points because Rain says, personal hot take, Canucks do not trade, and they select Coots from the Seattle Thunderbirds. Feels so much like hype to move the pick only to be let down in the end of a trade as expected. So Rain agrees with you, or at least with PJ. So thank you, Rain, for that comment. And you know who else was picked 15th overall? Jonathan Lekkerimäki, and he's exactly what you just said. A few years away. He was drafted in 2022, so we're looking at him finally making impact maybe next year. 3 years after he got drafted. So that's exactly what you said. And you're right. He's not the greatest player ever, but he's not like a bad player, and he's still someone who has potential. You just explained the 15th overall pick this year, as PJ said, and you just explained Jonathan Lekkerimäki. So I guess really that's what it comes down to, right, Parker, is are we willing to pick a guy in the same vein and skill and development as a Lekkerimäki, and look where it's got us so far. Yes, there's flashes of promise. There's still a lot of inconsistency because he's young, and we ultimately don't know what he's going to turn out to be.
Yeah, and it's tricky because he had a tough playoff, right? Didn't play a ton, and he's a guy you want to start to excel at that level if he's going to start making an impact. And You know, an interesting thought on Coots again on this other a different scout basically says, you know, he's a great junior, but he profiles similar to like, you know, Peyton Krebs, Alex Newhook, Jost, Sam Steele, who have all sort of underwhelmed at the pro level, right? They've been, you know, they were excellent in junior, but you know, they weren't able to make that step. So there's a few, you know, a few names circling around. One I don't know how to pronounce, Kashan Aichison.
Good.
Victor Eklund is also a name floating. If he drops, you know, he's projected to go late top 10. But then, you know, what do the Canucks do? Do you think they try to make a move like before the draft? Is this a hold on to it until the last possible minute? Like wait till you're on the clock to make that move? Because maybe someone that, you know, let's say Minnesota, if we're thinking the Marco Rossi route, right?
Yep.
If we get to 15 and someone Minnesota really highly values is still on the draft board there, then maybe that helps make that move go through, right? Or maybe the Canucks can then use that as some leverage and get a little bit more and say, well, we know your guy's still here. You know, we've got another team calling and they want him too, right? And you can maybe pit those against each other. It's tricky because then if the guy Minnesota wants isn't there when you get to that point and you didn't make the move until then, well, then maybe they pull the offer entirely. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the Canucks do. I think they have to go in with as much info as possible, right? You need to know what teams want who, and you know, that way you'll know who's left, and it's gonna be, you know, tricky to work around.
You make a fascinating point, Parker, about the whole, holding out and trying to get the best deal and trying to know what types of players teams want. Have there been any smoke screens? Do you actually take a player out for lunch or for dinner just to make it look like you're interested, just to make a team behind you sweat a little bit? And of course, they're not trying to figure this out in the 3 minutes that they have on the clock. They're working all these combinations and permutations. So that's why I think people love, I don't know about you, I'm a sucker for those behind the scenes type things and those types of videos where you hear people talking and people mic'd up. All to say, you're right. It might even happen way before Friday. It might happen tomorrow. It might happen Thursday, and where we're not even worried about who the Canucks are going to pick because we wake up Friday morning and they don't have their pick anymore. I don't know. I can't believe that it's already June 23rd, and I know you and I were lamenting when the season ended, whatever, middle of April. Oh my gosh, we got to wait 9 weeks until the draft, and we're finally here.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's so many other shoes to drop, right? Like now that, you know, the Stanley Cup's been awarded, right? Now you have all these UFAs that are re-signing their deals, right? Especially the Florida ones, right? You know, it looks like Sam Bennett's getting extended. You know, some big names that might be coming off, you know, free agency. Yeah. Obviously, you know, Besser doesn't sound like he's coming back, right? There's quite a few teams interested in him. I think I saw 7 names that were floating Besser. I think Boston and Utah were pretty high up there, you know, competing with the Minnesota and LA and teams like that. So it sounds like, you know, some of these names are probably going to come off pretty quick on June 1. And, you know, if you're the Canucks, and again, we'll preview free agency more when we get there, but I think we'll probably know a bit better on what's going on. You know, I have this fear that the Canucks are going to sort of be standing at the end of it as everyone else has gotten their guy. And that's why I feel like this Marco Rossi thing, like I just keep feeling like the Canucks really want to do that because I just don't see anyone that can fill that need that's really out there, right? Zegras was an option that was being floated around. He got traded this morning. So that's another name off the books. Yeah.
By the way, out of 10, how upset were you? Not necessarily Zegras. No, upset's the wrong word. Let's start again. I'll open it up. What were your thoughts when you saw the Zegras trade?
Pretty affordable.
Yeah.
Frankly. You know, this is the guy who was on the cover of NHL 23, right? Like 2 years ago. And he's, you know, what do you got? 45th overall, a 4th, and Ryan Poehling.
Yeah.
So really key there is 45th overall. Yeah. You know, Poehling's decent, but, you know, more of a depth guy.
Yeah.
You know, Zegras had 32 points, 57 games this year, right? You know, his best, he had 2 years as a 60-point player. This year, he projected around 50 if he played the entire season.
Yeah.
You know, he hasn't taken the step that we thought, right? You know, you were looking at this guy who was 21 years old. He put up 61 points and he was doing cool stuff. He was like trying Michigans and he had some swagger to him. But that's just sort of disappeared, and he hasn't been healthy either. So there's some risk, right? You know, the contract's fine because he's an RFA after this year. So even though he makes almost $6 million, like it's a 1-year deal at this point. So I don't think that's a big concern. I think it's a pretty good trade for Philly.
Yeah, I thought so too. Both can be true. I thought it was fine for Philly, but I wasn't itching for the Canucks to get him. Like I'm intrigued by him, but do you think? I know that a lot of people, the first thing they said was, "Oh, him and Tocchet already a match made in not heaven." What do you think? Do you think they'll be fine?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fair question, especially when there's guys like Michkov there as well.
Yeah.
They've got some skilled guys. And they, you put a couple of those guys together and you might get some magic or you might get a disaster.
Sure.
But if you're the Flyers who, disappointed a bit this year, I think it's worth taking some shots.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. By the way, one thing just before we jump off of Abby, I know we got a lot to catch up on. Was there any part of you that says, "Oh man, I wish the Canucks didn't hire Adam Foote yet because Malhotra would have been so much better"? Or were you fine with how all that happened because you think the Canucks needed to move to lock up not just their head coach, but their assistants as well?
It's tricky because Adam Foote to me isn't very, I don't know if that he's very highly regarded in other, in external head coaching searches, right?
Sure.
I don't know if the Canucks hadn't, locked him in when they did, that they'd be sitting there watching him go sign with another team while they waited. Mm-hmm. So I look at that, but they also had the information on Malhotra before, it was a couple rounds ago, right? Like they knew what this team was, they knew what he was doing, and they made the decision that they wanted to make, right? There's the obvious comparisons to Carberry in Washington, same age, but obviously Carberry coached like 6 or 7 years of pro hockey at a head coach level before going to Washington and winning the Jack Adams this year. I worry about him leaving the organization, but I also wherever let's say he goes to Dallas, right? Because that's one of the prevailing rumors. Let's say Dallas signs him. Is he out of a job in 4 years? Statistically, yes. Right? Like every head coach doesn't last 4 years with a team unless they go on a bunch of big runs.
Yeah.
And you just grab him then. Right?
Yeah.
Because is Adam Foote going to last here for 4 years as head coach? Probably not.
Yeah.
Right? And if he does, then things have gone very well. So I don't know. I don't feel this whole you're missing your one chance with this guy. Because these decisions that you are making around your head coach, they're fairly temporary ones. However, I like the way Abbotsford's been playing, and I think I think I would have been okay with Malhotra being the head coach of this team. Adam Foote, I'm not as sold on at the moment, but it's because we never seen him head coach other than junior.
Yeah, that's a good rational take, and I know even someone said it was interesting. BW says everyone reacts about Manny. Everyone who want to talk it out also wants Manny to stay, but talking to Manny coach the same. Well, I don't know if they're exactly the same, but I hear what you're saying. They're a part of the same organization and we're aligned in their vision. And now Tocchet didn't last even a year and a half here or so, or he did last, but exactly a year and a half. You know what's interesting too, Parker? I was at Game 4, so I took Gil to Game 4 on Thursday. That's the one they won, and it was a lot of fun. Only because not only the baby Canucks, of course, and these are guys that you and we followed ever since they've been drafted as the team or come over and we get a sense of what they might be able to do at the NHL level. So I'm looking at that from a, not that I'm the smartest guy in there, but at least I know what's going on standpoint. But then when I step back and Gail doesn't know who half these players are, which is fine. Just the entertainment factor, because you know how we talk about World Juniors are so fun because they make all these mistakes and then it's some really good goals and some really funny saves or good saves and then a lot of rough stuff. That's what I felt like watching. Like these are obviously professionals and they're all striving to get to the NHL and some are career AHLers, but it was fun. There was a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of good goals, a lot of great saves, a lot of big hits. Like it was a really, really good time. I was very impressed.
The game with the one huge hit in the corner.
Oh yeah, Nielsen, Tristan Nielsen. Yeah,
yeah, that was sweet.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of
fun hockey, especially because you're lower bowl no matter what. There's not a bad seat in there. It's a good time. It's a fun little rink. Parking sucks, but it's a fun little rink.
Yeah, I ended up. I thought I would get there in time to get the free spots, but I didn't. So I paid $7. It wasn't the end of the world. Just on the, I don't know what the street is, but just off of the other side of UFE, it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, the one that goes down and around.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Yeah, terrible out of there, but
yeah,
$7. It's not bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we're both happy about Abbotsford. It'll be interesting to see. We both prognosticate or predict 3 or 4 of the guys at least having a shot making the team. All good stuff because we need those cheap options. Can we talk about Oilers Panthers for a couple minutes?
Let's do it. Yeah. Man, the Oilers got dominated, eh?
Going in, did you? I can't remember when our show was in relation to before game 1.
I can tell you that in 2 seconds here.
Great.
We did June 2nd, so it was before game 1.
Yeah, well before game 1. Oh, no, not well before. Just before game 1.
Pretty well right before game 1.
I can't remember if you told me that who you wanted to win and why, if you did.
I was unsure at that time.
Okay.
I felt that I had lost some of my hatred for the Oilers, and the Panthers were frustrating me.
Yeah.
However, as the series went on, it was really clear to me that Florida was a better team. Like you look at the games Edmonton won, and they were grinds, they were tight, and then Florida just came out and ran away with a couple.
Yeah.
So I think the team that deserved to win won, and that's sort of my preference. Although I really, really wanted Game 7 out of that series.
Yeah. And what happened in Game 6? Florida scored early, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Florida kind of ran away with it, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it didn't feel very close. Yeah, it was a 5-1 game. They scored 2 in the first period, 1 5 minutes in, 1 right before the buzzer, and the Oilers were never in it. Which sucked because when you watched game 1 of that series and game 2 of that series. Yes. It was like, oh, this is going to be an instant classic. Like, this is going to be one of the best Stanley Cup finals we see.
Yes.
And then Florida wins 6-1. But then Edmonton ties it at 5-4. Again, a fantastic game. Yeah. And you're like, all right, we're back. We're tied at 2. Again, it's going to be a classic of a series. Yeah. The last 2 games, Edmonton just didn't show up. Yes. And it kind of was not a sad end, because I think I still prefer that Florida won, but just kind of a, anticlimactic end to that series.
Yeah. And I'm sure if this was Oilers After Dark or whatever, we'd totally get into all the storylines. We don't have to today, but there were so many storylines. Everything from Stuart Skinner, Calvin Pickard, like who to go with. That was kind of interesting. Basically, Matthias Ekholm continually getting walked on the right side.
Crazy, man. I thought he was good.
He is good. He's not supposed to play over there. And then Bouchard wasn't great. Perry had a decent series. Their third best forward was, and Zach Hyman, of course, that was huge. So a lot of interesting stories on the Oilers side and the Panthers. I made a point, Parker, on my show. Any of the Panthers' top 6, you could even say top 9 with Luciani, Lundell, and Marchand. You take them almost over every single forward on the Canucks. That's how deep they are. They're top.
They are so well built. It's a GM masterclass, really. Yeah. That Marchand trade, it's just is crazy how well that worked out. We knew he'd be a contributor. I didn't think he'd be that important to that team, but he really brought them together. And you could tell those were a grindy hockey team, right? And they all bought in, and they produced. They were very, very good.
They ran four of the same 6 defensemen back. Of course, they lose Montour and Ekman Larson, but they we'll just add Seth Jones. Yeah, we'll just do that.
Yeah. And again, I'm not a big Seth Jones guy, but I was always anti Seth Jones because he was getting paid $9.25 or whatever he was getting paid. He as a $5 million defenseman, Seth Jones is fantastic. Yep. And they pulled him in to essentially play that role. It's masterclass. Like, great, fantastic addition.
Since we're talking about the Oilers, and we always like to acknowledge donations, Spartan, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, so I haven't heard this rumor, so this is my first time I've seen this. Demko for Savoie. The young guy, obviously.
It's a real rumor.
Yeah.
It's a real rumor.
Spartan, where'd you get it from? Tell us while we talk about it.
It's from
and thank you for the donation.
I've never heard of. But also someone in the Canucks subreddit said Matt Savoie ? And then everyone in the chat or everyone in the comments was like, nah. So I mean, Savoie, he's an AHLer this year. He's 21. He's a center. Okay. He was 9th overall in 22, right? So went 6 picks before Lekkerimäki. But he's the only one in the top 13 of that draft that has played less than 40 games. And he's only played 5 at the NHL level. He's played 5 games, has 1 point. So he's sort of a sell low candidate for Edmonton. They traded him. He got traded from Buffalo for Ryan McLeod, who actually was really good for the Sabres this year. Had 53 points, and but he hasn't made that jump yet. Good in the AHL level. He had 54 points in 66 games for the Condors, but I don't know if that's the bet that the Canucks are looking to take for a guy who might project to be a 2C if he hits, but he hasn't yet, and it's been 3 years.
Right. And then as you established right from the start, we always know that the goalie market is not very strong. Maybe that's why it's only Demko for Savoie. And I don't know. Maybe you're gonna have to cut ties with Demko eventually. But I still don't. Maybe I'm old school. I don't want to trade him within the division though. I don't know.
And also I look at this team's path to the playoffs.
Yeah.
This team's path to the playoffs does not go through Lankinen and Shilovs.
Right.
It just doesn't. A big part of this team's path to the playoffs is a healthy Thatcher Demko.
Yeah, that's fair.
A big path for the Edmonton Oilers to finally win a Stanley Cup could definitely go through a Thatcher Demko, right? Mm-hmm. They need a stable, reliable number 1 goalie. Skinner and Picard can play at times. Yep. They've had their nights. But man, that's they would get a lot of value and not give up anyone on their roster. And I think that's, I just don't see that being enough of a return for the Canucks.
That's
especially.
That's fair. Oh, thank you,
the division makes sense because Edmonton with Demko locks up one in the Pacific again.
Yep.
Right. Yep. And makes it a tough path through. And now you've given up your shot at home ice advantage for Savoie.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're sitting there going to Canucks Oilers games, and not only do we get scored on a lot because it's McDavid and Draisaitl, but then we can't score on the other end because Demko's healthy. No, thank you. Yeah. But Spartan, thank you for the donation. We appreciate you. Wow. Okay, so I think I did not have a dog in the fight. Panthers Oilers. I remember saying, because I remember our show now from the start of June where we were both saying this be McDavid's year. Is this the year he finally does it, right? All the hype about his big speech last year in the dressing room and him not even winning scoring title, blah blah blah. But him and Draisaitl, could this be their year? But the same things happened. They were weak on defense. They had suspect goaltending, and as someone mentioned too, Evander Kane was skating around like a goofball too. So I don't know. There's a lot there.
And I'm sure you saw McDavid's interview after, where the doors. He didn't close the door on leaving potentially after his contract is up. Yeah. I mean, if you're the Oilers and you hear that, like every alarm bell now goes to, like I know they were all in before. Yeah. But they need to be more all in. They need to empty their prospect covers, right? Like Matt Savoie, great example. He has to get traded, right? Like because he's one of their decent trade chips. Their 2027 first round pick. They should not have that anymore, right? That's where the Oilers need to jump on these things, and that's going to be their only shot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, very good. Very good. Quick reaction. Jonathan Toews coming back, playing with the Winnipeg Jets.
Expensive. That was my first reaction. I mean, $2 million base, but the bonuses will, if he plays, the bonuses get that up to $5 million, right? It was like games played bonuses, not performance, which was kind of surprising.
What's the cap hit again? What's the cap hit?
I think it's like 2.
Okay.
2 something, maybe 2.5. But if he plays a certain number of games, that gets all the way up to 5, and there's some performance bonuses on top of that. So what's nice about the bonus structure is, of course, if he hits those bonuses, you can put that on your cap this year or next year, depending on, what allocation you have left. If they finish the season and had $3 extra million of cap space, they can put all of his bonuses on there. But otherwise, it carries to next year, and that's going to limit them a decent bit as well.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I like, even when he was beating up on the Canucks, I maybe I respect is probably a better way. I totally respect him. Obviously, gold medal with Canada too. So kind of fascinating to see what he's gonna do when he comes back, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of captains are that way, right? Like I think like Kopitar, right? I know he wasn't really the captain a lot of that time. That was Brown, but you always respect that guy, right? Even Iginla, right? Like, especially for in division, he was a heck of a hockey player.
Interesting. Swerve and Irvin, do you think it's similar? The Oilers fans sweating about McDavid's extension like we are with Quinn?
I don't know if they are yet. I think they're grieving a little bit still.
Right.
It's only been a week, and I'm sure that doesn't help. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. By the way, am I a bad person if I like seeing, I don't mind McDavid. I like seeing Draisaitl lose because he's just so babyish in his post-game interviews.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I have trouble overlooking how good of a hockey player he is.
That's fair.
Like that.
That's totally fair. Yeah. All right, a couple of quick hitters. You mentioned Besser, probably good as gone. At least seven cities. Teams looking at him. Dollywall is saying that the Canucks are looping back to Pius Suter. I don't know. I like him. I like what he brings to the team. Obviously, it's so easy to say it depends on the number, but I just have a feeling that he's going to be gone too.
Yeah, I like him too, but do I $4.5 million like him?
Yeah.
Because that's what it sounds like it's going to take. Now, 2 years with the Canucks. I mean, this year, obviously, 46 points in 81 games. He was really the only one showing up for a while. He played like a $4.5 million player this year.
Yeah,
I think is fair. Last year, 29 points in 67 games. Not really a $4.5 million player, maybe 3.5. And then he had those 2 years with the Red Wings where he made $3.25 million a year. And one of those years he did have 36 points, and then the year after he had 24. So he's basically had 4 full seasons, right? And then he played the shortened season in Chicago, had 27 and 55. So again, sort of that 40-ish pace. So really in 5 seasons, he's had 3 where he's been around 40 points per season. And then he's had 2 where he's closer to 25 to 35.
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable number, especially because of the way he plays, right? He's solid defensively. He'll play on the penalty kill, that Swiss Army knife cliche, but it really works for him, right? Because you can put him in wherever you want in the lineup. However, he's May 24th, 1996. So he's 29 now. And if he gets 4 years, he'll be 33 at the end of that. It seems, I think it would be okay.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's the most optimal way to spend $4.5 million.
I think Rain agrees with you, and Rain is expressing what I've heard maybe he'll say is on a deeper team. He's not, we played him everywhere. We played him top 6, bottom 6, middle 6. But I think 75% of playoff teams, he's a 3C. So it truly depends on who gets him and for how much. And that's fair. And he says, Rain says Suter's going to get overpaid by someone. Yeah.
Yeah. And also it's tricky because $4.5 million for a 3C sounds like a ton.
Yeah.
But with the cap going up, and I don't like the caps going up argument, because it's like, well, it goes up for every team, and you keep saying the cap's going up, but it's going up by like $8 million, and you've used that to justify $20 million of extra spending, right? That doesn't math up. But you get that little bit of inflation of, hey, if the cap goes up 10%, well then, $4.5 million today is the same as 4.05 yesterday, right? Is the same as 3.5, or maybe even 10 years ago, $3 million, right?
Right.
So that's where it gets, because I would look at a third line center, if you're like a good third line center, like a Pius Suter, if you're paying $3 million a year, like, it's probably great value, right? Same with, a really, a good 4-5 defenseman. $3 million is fine. But, that's, the numbers always increase quicker than you were sort of ready for, because you always look at it and you're like, number one center should be making like $7 million. Not the case anymore, right? Number one center makes 10 to 11 to 12. So, the inflation in salaries is real. You sort of have to account for that.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. If I asked you, true or false, at this time next week, let's cheat it a little bit. On July 2nd, do we still have all three of DPD, Tom Verlander, and Victor Mancini?
I think so. Because I really think the move that they're going to want to make is for Rossi.
Yep.
And I think 15 gets you pretty close.
You think so?
I think it does. I don't know. It's tricky, because I've seen some people say, like, it's 15 and like a roster player that's not very good. But then I've also seen people like, it's 15 and Lekkerimaki. And that's too much, in my opinion. Because especially because he's going to need to get paid, right? Yeah. And it sounds like the Canucks have one prospect untouchable, and it's not Verlander. It's Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
And I think you'd be silly to trade Verlander right now, because, defensemen take a bit to develop. So I think if it has to be done to get the deal over the line, okay. But I think Mancini is going to bring value to the Canucks lineup this year. I think Elias Pettersson is going to bring value to the Canucks lineup this year. I think Verlander might not. I think he might be more of an AHL player. So if anyone's moved, it might be him.
Right. So I agree with everything you said, for sure, except that I didn't vlog about it, but I know there's a report out that the Canucks did indeed offer the 15th overall for Rossi, and Minnesota rejected it. And in fact, the rumor is Rossi and a roster player. Sorry. 15th overall on a roster player, but who knows who that roster player is, right? It could be Drew O'Connor. It could be Dakota. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, but also that offer being made a week and a half before the draft is a lot different than that offer being made while the 12th overall is on the clock, right?
Great point.
And we're down to the last hour because, Minnesota holds that card for some time right now, right? And they can field as many offers as they can over the next couple of days. Yeah. So, while it might have been rejected then, Minnesota's also probably thinking like, we can just pick that back up in a week and a half, but maybe we can get some more. Maybe we can, find some other team that might be interested. So it might still work. We'll see.
Yeah. Do you worry about this? If we do get Rossi, no matter what it costs, do you worry about the lack of size, or do you think at least down the middle, or do you think the Canucks can mitigate that somehow?
I think, especially if, let's say they do bring Suter back, right? And you're looking at Pettersson, Rossi, Hedl, Suter as your four centers. Yeah. That's a small group. At least it's a slight group. Yeah. I don't know. It's tricky because a lot of teams get really caught up in we have to do whatever the team that just won the Stanley Cup is doing, but we're going to be well behind the curve, right? And you look at Florida and it's big bodies, it's grindy hockey with a lot of skill too. I think I underrate size personally, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying that I think I've played way too much NHL growing up that size doesn't really have an impact, and so I'm all about just skill level, which isn't like I'm saying, I don't think that's the correct approach, But I also don't think that this team, I don't think your centers are your only option to have size, right?
Right.
You can have size on the back end. You can have size on the wings. And I think you can be a bit of a smaller team and still have success. I'm just not sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point about playing NHL because you never were winning games with the big guys in there. It's the guys that could like cut across the crease.
Everyone.
Yeah, the goalie can't react because of that glitch. Anyway, so the one guy you mentioned it because I kind of set you up for it because I was asking about DPD Philander Mancini. Man, Parker, when I saw Mancini play live, and of course I saw him play live when he played for Vancouver, but against Abbotsford, where it's guys were kind of like tweeners, right? He looks so good out there. He's fast. He's big. A little reckless at times, but maybe that's what makes him so endearing. Like he's raw. He's I keep calling him Jovo to me. That's who he is.
He's an unreal skater.
Yeah.
That's a huge asset, right?
Yeah.
There's and it seems like he's got decent hockey IQ, and those are the big ones, right? You can't really teach speed, you can't teach size, and you can't teach hockey IQ. And he's definitely got the first two. He's got the size, he's got the speed. It's whether or not he can put it all together. Because he could be a weapon out there. I really think he could make a push to make the team.
Yeah.
And if you have a guy like him in the third pairing role where maybe he, if he's doing well, maybe he can step up at times. And, I really hope that ends up being a really good find.
Yeah. And if I had to pick one, I'm still picking Willander over Mancini just because of pedigree, potential, I should say. But, I could see a world where Willander starts in Abbotsford next year. As much as people, I can already see this happening, Parker. Canucks fans are going to be itching, given everything behind the delayed signing and the fact that he was 11th overall. They're going to want to see Willander in the lineup when there's going to be absolutely no harm in starting him in Abbotsford.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so I'm looking. Yeah, Mancini's waiver exempt next year. Still, so that's good. I mean, even Kudratsev is an interesting one to keep an eye on, right? I mean, he's 21, but he was fantastic in the playoffs for them, and he could try to make a push. But again, another year of seasoning wouldn't hurt. And then obviously Villander's got a few years of waiver exemption.
What would you do if they gave Mancini the 6th spot and they put Willander in the minors and they signed Noah Juleson to be number 7?
It'd be interesting. I mean, I wouldn't love it unless the plan is someone gets injured, Juleson stays number 7, and someone comes up.
Right.
I don't really want to see Juleson play many games. Mancini is 39 games away from needing waivers. So you can play him the first half of the season until he will require waivers. So I think, it's pretty irrelevant. You can play him if you'll know by game 39 of the year whether you're keeping him up or not. It's an interesting one. I think Mancini is probably more NHL ready.
Right.
I think Willander could use, even if it's just a handful of weeks in the AHL and he's killing it down there, sure. But I think you got to adjust to the pro game at the very least.
And Jarhead makes a great point. Whether it was Villander's fault in negotiations, the Canucks' fault, or a little bit of column A or column B, he did miss out on the Calder Cup because he wasn't signed in time.
Well, no, they could have.
They could have played him.
The option when they signed him,
right?
When they signed him, they did have the option to send him down, and they were talking about it. And I don't know if he said it or his agent said it, but I think they said it wouldn't be fair to the players who had already worked on that team all season.
Good point.
And built that team, and he didn't want to take someone's spot. That was the polite speak of it. I don't know if that's the agent speak or the legal speak, but that's what we were told at the very least.
Okay, I accept that. All right, before we go to the people for the last 10 minutes, we covered a lot. Abbotsford, the Stanley Cup Finals, draft, a bit of free agency, coaching. Anything else you want to sneak in?
I don't think so. I think the draft next week or this week is going to be really interesting. Because I think there might be some fireworks. We might have a big trade Friday night. And I'm excited. I'm excited to sit down and just sit down and watch the draft and have a fun Friday night.
And I will say this, 7 years ago, and this would make sense because of the way the calendar evolves. 7 years ago, when my eldest son, Sean, graduated, it was the first night of the draft in Vancouver. I saw the Vancouver Canucks and Stan Smyl. We joked about this butcher, Vasily Podkolzin's name, and they drafted Podkolzin. Then I went to Sean's after grad, and I was a roulette and blackjack dealer for overnight. Then I got an hour's sleep, and I went back, and then the Canucks announced that they traded for JT Miller right before the start of day 2, if you remember all of that from 2019, so 6 years ago. This year, Kayla's grads on Friday nights. First night of the draft, I'm volunteering as a blackjack and roulette dealer for all her friends. Then I'm going to go home and sleep for an hour, and then it's day number 2. Yeah,
You're
so good.
Manifesting a big splash.
I'm giving it to Parker. You heard it here first. The Canucks are going to do something massive on Saturday morning. There we go.
I like it. It'll be exciting at the very least.
Yes. All right. You want to go 10 minutes of
Let's
questions?
go 10 minutes with the people.
Okay.
I like this one. Should the Canucks re-sign Phil DiGiuseppe? He's now a UFA. Did you see the clip of him?
No, what do you do? What happened?
Oh, as was Waters the captain?
Is he? Yeah, sure.
As he was getting handed the cup,
yeah,
you can see PDG in the background of the video just flipping 2 birds up to the Charlotte fans in the crowd. I guess they were mouthing at him or something. It's a hilarious clip. But yeah, he's. I think you gotta bring him back after that.
I will check that out. But in all seriousness, doesn't he do what we want, like Carlson, Bain, Sasson to do, like just be a solid in the bottom 6?
Yeah, I think on a one-way, or I mean, if you're signing him to be a depth guy that comes in for injury, right? That's sort of the only situation I see. Otherwise, I could see him going to, one of the bottom end teams and be an NHLer, or he stays here and plays majority AHL time. I think is sort of where we're at.
Good. Love Doodle Hockey's comment. We won the Calder basically without DPD, Verlander, and Ratu, who didn't play. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what's so funny? Out of sight, out of mind. I keep forgetting to mention Ratu as a guy who will likely make the Canucks next year too, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think he's sort of a lock to be 4C.
Right.
It leaves Oman on the outs, but I think there's just so many people pushing behind him that's fair enough.
Yeah. So there's something that happened since our last show. We see pictures of Brass. Instead of at the combine, they are walking through potential practice facilities.
Yeah, like municipal rinks. Which is fun to see.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Have you?
No, and I don't. At least they're looking now that they lost their coach because of it.
Yeah. That's really, really funny. Oh, this one's interesting. Will decentralization hamper the Canucks' ability to make other GMs sweat? What Irvin is getting? Yeah, it's a decentralized draft emanating out of LA. Yeah,
they're not.
Yeah,
the Sphere is kind of fun.
Yeah,
I hate it, to be honest with you. I think it's probably a lot easier for every team because they can be in their offices, in their war room. They're not just at this table on the draft floor where there's like a bunch of cameras and a bunch of people around. Yeah. I think it makes sense for the GMs, and it's what like the NFL does, right? If you ever watch the NFL draft, there's no draft floor. Like every team's just in their own cities and in their war rooms and everything. But it's fun. It's fun when you get like the tweet like, hey, like this guy just walked over to this table and like they're like videoing and like you see one GM go over, like the GM of the Senators walks over to the Sabres table and you're like, oh, is something going to go down?
Yes.
I think that makes for a better experience. So we'll see. I'm not as excited about that. But I don't know if in reality it makes all that much of a difference. But when you have like 10, especially round 1, when you have like 12 minutes between every pick, it's fun to sort of see what's going on down there.
Yeah, true. And I'll be very interested to see if they actually have really nice cameras. They send them to all 32 boardrooms, right, across the North America versus, they'll just put a little webcam up and we'll take your feed and put it on our show. Like, who knows what it's going to look like, truly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to read this and see what they're doing. Yeah, prospects will be in LA.
Yeah.
A lot of logistics to work out. Teams are welcome to be in LA, but they won't have reserved space. So yeah, it's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be. I wonder how that's going to turn out.
Yeah. Another good question from Swerve and Irving, because I've been noticed, like, I don't know if you saw any of the parade, the parade footage. Sam Bennett basically pretending he was going to apologize for everyone who says that they're, and then he goes and he starts swearing. So they're Marchand. So the Panthers are showing a lot of personality. Barkov going to his neighbor's house at 5 a.m. A lot of personality. And I guess Irvin's making the point is, better than having the Tim Duncan and San Antonio Spurs of the NBA. I'm fine with it. I don't. I think it's been great, actually.
I haven't even seen anyone be mad, to be honest. Maybe not being on Twitter has made life a lot better in that way too.
That's right. You mentioned that 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
because this is to me, this is a guy I've never seen. I haven't seen anyone make this comment. This is a
totally
guy.
Fair.
We're arguing about a guy who doesn't exist.
Just Oilers fans.
I love it, man. Like Marchand's Instagram stories about like thanks to every team for
tagging them too, right?
Awesome. That's so funny, man. And then you have Barkov like helping Marchand out of the club. It's great. Like, no, I think everyone's on board.
Yeah. Fangirl, respectfully, no, Verlander just has a completely different game than Juleson. He's tall, he's lean, he's a great skater, especially compared to Juleson. Juleson's a lot tougher, and Juleson brings a lot of grit. But they're not better or worse. Verlander's ceiling is much higher, and they're just completely two different players. I think that's fair to say. Parker, yeah?
Yep, absolutely.
All right, good. Calvin, how come no one told me what Canucks have draft? That's why you got to hit that. I can't believe everyone says hit that. Hit the notification bell. You got it. But glad you're here, Calvin, and watch the replay. No problem.
I've got a fun little side bet.
Yeah,
because so apparently Gary Bettman will announce the first pick.
Yep.
But the remaining 31 are going to be special guests based on the team. So if the Canucks make a pick, who is making that pick?
Okay, I got mine already.
Who do you think?
Buble.
Didn't he do it last year?
Oh, good point. I don't know.
Oh no, he said actually because he is mentioned in this article as someone who was involved in the previous NHL event.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. There was the whole like mushrooms incident. I don't know if they.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, the thing is, if they want the biggest celebrity connected to the Canucks, it's definitely Buble. But is
standpoint,
right. Is that what they're going for though? Or are they just going for? You should do it, man. Me and you.
That would be very odd.
From Canucks after.
If there was still like 20 rounds in the draft or something, then we might have a shot. Like round 19.
Yeah, if that. Yeah.
But I don't think that's.
Who do you think?
I don't know. I didn't think about it before I asked the question. I was just sort of throwing it out there.
Yeah. Well, how about you guys in the chat? Who do you think? And go off the board or just who you think is most deserving?
Swerve and Irvin. I was thinking about this. How I Met Your Mother lady. It could be Kobe Smulders. She was in one of the Canucks videos, and she could go out in a Mason Raymond jersey, and that would be very fitting.
I like that. We got Buble. Rain agrees with me. Coach Rob says Mark Messier.
Doubt that one.
Fangirl says Naslin or Linden. And then we got a wrestler.
LA though.
Kevin Owens, the wrestler.
It's got to be someone who would be in LA. Is the thing, right? That's the tricky part.
Okay, so that asterisk then makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to some more questions. Rain says, why is there talk about wanting to trade Hronek? Because his role changed when he signed a contract extension, went from driving his own pair to being the Devontae or Quentin Hughes. I think it was just one person who said that this is a possibility, right? I don't think it's that serious.
I haven't seen any of this. And I think again, the one reason you might think something like that is, well, the Canucks' weakness is centers and the Canucks' strength is defense right now, right? Mm-hmm. So if you trade from a position of strength to back up a position of weakness, that's one of the things you might do. It's exactly how we got Philip Hronek in the first place. We traded a position of strength center to get a position of weakness filled out right side defense. And you could try to do the inverse there. I don't see it.
Yeah, that's fair. Are you worried Alvin could be worse than Benning?
No,
no way, right?
No, there's very few people who are worse. Very few.
Jarhead mentioned, echoed what you said. The Sphere was so much fun. This year, the kids have to celebrate at home on their couches.
Can still be there. Prospects can still be there.
Right.
At least the top 25 or top 50 Top 50 are invited, but
Yeah.
other prospects may choose to attend, but will not be formally invited.
There we go.
So,
Zal, we touched on this earlier in the show. We don't know. One of the 3 goalies could get hurt, and then you don't have to make a roster decision right away. That's not what we want, but it's a possibility. We could try and sneak him down on that day that Parker talked about, where you send 5-6 guys down. So there's like 180 guys going down on one day. You never know. But that's going to be a fascinating story to watch over the next 3 months, for sure. Yeah. How you doing? You good?
I think it's about that time.
All right.
Folks, like we said, draft is Friday and Saturday. Round 1 Friday, the big one. You probably won't see the Canucks make a pick until Saturday, knowing what we know. We will be back for a show on Monday next week, which is June 30th, to preview free agency. We should have a lot more info post-draft free agency. It should be really probably one of our biggest shows of the offseason. Low bar. But we'll do that. And then if there's any big splashes in free agency, we might do another one on the first. But make sure you have the notifications on, so you don't have to show up and be like, oh, no one told me.
Yeah, Charlie.
I'm just kidding. So make sure you have notifications on. If you missed any part of the show, you can rewind back to the beginning. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform in a few minutes. Clay, anything you want to wrap up with this Monday night?
Great to see you. Great to be back. Looking forward to at least 1, if not 2 shows next week. And if you're not sick of Canucks talk, I didn't watch the Abbotsford Canucks game, so I'll be doing a quick recap with a guest in about 15 minutes if you want to continue on. But otherwise, thank you, Parker. This was great, and it was awesome to reconnect. And we'll see if we can break our string of 1 show over 7 weeks for this summer. I guess only time will tell.
Maybe if the Canucks do something over the 7 weeks, we'll see. You folks, jump on over to Clay's stream. I will not be there. I'll be going to bed.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Thank you for staying up for us, Parker.
that's okay. Have a good night, everyone. We will see you next Monday.